Good afternoon from Galway, Ireland. Good morning, good evening to some of you, and welcome to the inaugural Global Heart Hub Unite Summit, a virtual event for our first outing due to the ongoing COVID pandemic. My name is Neil Johnson, and it's my absolute pleasure to open the inaugural Global Heart Hub Unite Summit, and to be joined today by a community of almost 400 individuals from across 51 countries interested in the patient voice in cardiovascular disease. Firstly, a word, if I can, about the Global Heart Hub and who we are. In fact, we just launched this organization this month 2 years ago, with the aim of building an international alliance of heart patient organizations. And I'm delighted to say that today we have over 70 patient organizations across the world affiliated to the Global Hub. And why did we need the Global Hub? Well, unlike in most other disease areas, despite the scale and burden of cardiovascular disease, the patient voice has been largely unheard. The international cardiovascular patient community has remained for far too long disconnected, disjointed in many respects, and therefore not having had the opportunity to share experiences, learn from each other, or support each other. Our aim, therefore, is to build an alliance of patient organizations and patient advocates, and to support them in developing their capacity and capability as advocates, initially for themselves, but also as advocates for the collective needs of those living with or affected by cardiovascular disease. We're living in a healthcare world of competing and often diminishing resources, and we know that unfortunately it's those who shout loudest who are very often the ones who are heard. And right across the spectrum of cardiovascular diseases, there are many unmet needs and many inequities from a patient and carer perspective. So we need a strong voice to represent these needs and advocate for change. Equally, in terms of the future direction and development of healthcare, the perspective of patients needs to be taken into account. For this reason, patient insights from lived experience are invaluable, and we need to build pathways and mechanisms by which these insights are sought and taken into account. This inaugural summit, as the name suggests, the Unite Summit, is our first step in bringing together and gaining insights and inspiration, which will help strengthen our individual and combined voices. And we're absolutely delighted to have assembled a very fine faculty of contributors for this two-day program. I must thank my colleague, Olive Fenton, who has led out on the development of this two-day program, and recognize also the support she has received from my other colleagues, Edel Keneally, Jackie O'Piea, Maureen Boyle, Maria Connolly, Sienna Fallon, and Teresa Glynn. Without their support, today and tomorrow's events would not be possible. And of course, for events such as this, we couldn't do this without the support of our sponsors. And I'm delighted to recognize the support and ongoing support since we founded Indeed from Edwards Lifesciences, Servier, Novartis, and Novo Nordisk. We're thrilled to have support from the World Heart Federation. And I'm delighted to welcome the president of the World Heart Federation, Professor Fausto Pinto, to make some opening remarks as we launch our first Global Heart Hub Unite Summit.
Hello, I'm Fausto Pinto. I am the current president of the World Heart Federation, and it gives me great pleasure to give you these words at the opening of your meeting organized by the Global Heart Hub. It's actually the first meeting convening all different patient organizations, and that's certainly one aspect that I would like to highlight from a WHF perspective and congratulate you on putting together this important meeting. And why is it important? Well, first of all, we are dealing with cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease still represents the number one killer in the world. It's the number one in mortality, the number one in morbidity, regardless of being in low, middle, or high income countries. So that's a huge responsibility for all of us involved with cardiovascular issues to make sure that we develop the right strategies to manage this terrible condition. At the same time, it's very important also that we develop strategies to improve cardiovascular health. And our motto actually at the WHF is cardiovascular health for everyone. And that's why it's so relevant to have patient organizations involved in all these different aspects related with cardiovascular issues. And this is why I want to salute Global Heart Hub, which is part of WHF, for doing all the work that have been doing over the last few years, convening all the different patient organizations and ensure that there is proper representation of patient organizations at the different levels of discussion and engagement in the different activities, in the different organizations, because from an advocacy standpoint, it's essential the role that patient organizations represent to achieve our goals. It's one of the most relevant channels to get through decision makers, through policy makers, and that's why it's so relevant to have this type of engagement. So I won't take long. I just want again to congratulate you, to salute you, to wish you a very good Congress, very useful, I'm sure, and that we will continue our way into a world where we hope cardiovascular health will be for everybody. Again, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you indeed, Professor Pinto, for those very encouraging words. And we're now about to move into the main body of today's session. In fact, we have two sessions with an interval. And I am delighted to welcome now the moderator for these two sessions, Nicola Bedlington, known to many of you, no doubt, as former Secretary General of the European Patient Forum, and somebody who, since we started out on the Global Hub, has been hugely supportive to us and has given us many great words of wisdom as we embark on this journey of building the patient voice in cardiovascular disease. Nicola, delighted to have you with us today, and I thank you again for supporting us in this regard. I'm going to hand over to you now, Nicola, to take us through to today's two sessions. And I know that at the end of the day, we'll catch up again and just reflect on the learnings from today. Thank you, Nicola.
Fantastic, Neil, and thank you so much for your very kind introduction. I'm also delighted and really honoured to be moderating the opening day of this very special summit. Today, our focus is very much on COVID-19 as a catalyst for change and influencing policy through the patient's powerful voice. But before we delve into the content, let's go through a few housekeeping slides to make sure we maximise your experience of participating in the summit. I think you're all very familiar with the unitesummit.com platform, and it's been designed specifically to make it as interactive and as interesting for all of you participating. We'd love you to pose questions, and please use the Q&A where that red arrow is pointing to ask your question, not the chat. And please, if you like a particular question, give it a thumbs up, and then we can gauge the interest amongst all of you. We'll work hard to ensure that we cover as many questions as possible, but as Neil said, with almost 400 participants, we may not get to all of them, so please bear with us a little. Please do use the Just One Thing tab shown on this next slide. Throughout the summit, we'll be asking you to share with fellow delegates the one thing that has inspired you, which you're going to share with your community, or which you will act upon. And please keep a note of your thoughts and share them during the breaks. Neil and I will be looking at these a little bit at the end of the session and comparing notes. Please do join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag GHHUnite ! Shown on this slide. It will be really fantastic to have the conversation also throughout social media throughout the 2 days. And when we have the break, please do take part in either a meditation session or a little bit of physical movement to relax for a few minutes before getting back to the core business. I wanted to highlight here because I'm particularly impressed with the resources that have been pulled together by the team, provided by the speakers and panelists, that really provide additional food for thought in relation to each of the sessions we're going to address. So don't forget about that. Fantastic to perhaps dip into it during the course of the summit, but more importantly, afterwards, have a look and use those really excellent materials.